Starting the show today with Eric Swalwell. Go, Eric.
Republicans have recognized that they can no longer win elections with votes, and so they're leaning in hard to try and win elections with violence. And they're fomenting that violence right now with the threats they're making against the Attorney General, with the online chatter that you continue to see with the fifth.
All right, welcome to GAMcast for August the 11th, 2022. Cloudy day in Atlanta. Good news is it is a lot cooler, just over 80, which, folks, if you're ever in Dixie in August, that's a very pleasant day. So I hope you're having good weather where you are. We have a ton of stuff to talk about. We're going to talk about the FBI raid, going to update you on that. It's looking sketchier and sketchier and sketchier. Or if you're fans of Alice in Wonderland, curiouser and curiouser. But we're going to explain it all to you. You probably already know what I'm going to say because it's pretty easy stuff to do. We're going to examine the case of people like Eric Swalwell, Merrick Garland, and Chuck Schumer. I want you to understand the environment and where these people come from and where we're going. Because Schumer is probably middle of the pack. Garland is actually, I think, a decent guy who this system is perverting. And Swalwell is one of the awful characters that this system now creates. We're also going to talk about Letitia James, Trump prosecutions, Nancy. I got so much stuff. Again, I'm looking at the windows, and I hope the computer doesn't crash. It didn't crash, but I hope it doesn't act up again like it has been a couple times. I think I'm just overwhelming the system with all these windows. But anyway, we shall see. So let's get back to Swalwell, though. But before we get there, I want you to understand a lot of what's going on right now, okay, is by design, by the leftists. This is what they do. This is a classic example of accuse the other side of that which you do. Saul Alinsky, Rules for Radicals, it's one of the playbooks they always go to. It's really designed to confuse, right? Because the confusion benefits them. We say this all the time. You can't say it too many times. All other systems lead to tyranny. There's only one system where you get the rule of law, and that's the constitutional republic that was founded in 1776. Well, the Constitution was 1789, but you get the idea. The Declaration of Independence, obviously, is what I'm referring to in 1776. Now, Swalwell is a leftist. This is all he does. He knows every daggum thing coming, and we're gonna listen. It's about a 3-minute bit. We're gonna listen to a lot of it because he does a lot of this. So Republicans, they can't win elections anymore, really. It's funny, because we're going to get to 538, who now gives the Republicans an 80% chance of taking the House, right? They just won an election in Virginia. Those of us that pay attention, and of course we all do, have noticed that pretty much all of the elections recently, since 2020, have been won by Republicans. What's he talking about? He's nonsense. He's the one sowing the chaos. What's another thing they do, right? Again, I said earlier, they accuse the chaos and they accuse you of that, which they're doing. So wait a minute. So we're the ones being violent. So if I show up, guns blazing, 30 people with a warrant, which, by the way, there's evidence now. In fact, let me get to that. That was number 2. It was in the can yesterday, and I get to it. You'll remember those of you tuned in yesterday, and a lot of you did. Thank you. Sorry about the 2-day delay, but glad people did. I didn't lose a lot of people on that. So, anyway, this was what I was going to read to you yesterday, and I'm glad I didn't because it's more pertinent today than it was yesterday. Remember, I was talking about somebody else talking, may have been Schumer, somebody else talking about the warrant, and I accidentally clicked out. Here's his tweet from yesterday, August 9th, okay, 10 a.m., well, 2 days ago. Donald Trump has a copy of the search warrant. He'd show us the warrant if he were so wrong. Show it or shut it. Now, it's interesting. Swalwell, who's an attorney, he sent that out. Now, I wonder where he got the idea that you would have a copy of the search warrant. Well, he got that idea because, as I said, he's a trained attorney. We all know that. You learn that even in law school. That's not one of the things, the theory things they teach you after you get out of law school. That's so basic they teach you in law school, right? Of course, it's presented. You get to look at it. You're given a copy of it. Why weren't they? Well, it turns out they weren't given a copy. Now, the New York Times, of course, a beacon of honesty, is saying, well, they got the manifest. Well, that's just a receipt of what they took, which, by the way, you're supposed to get that. So I want you to understand standing operating procedure, folks. Somebody knocks at your door. They don't have a warrant. They don't have a right to come in your house unless you voluntarily let them in. If they do have a warrant, they do have a right to come into your house, but they must present the warrant to you. You must review it. Once you review it, then as they leave, they must give you a manifest of what they've taken. Right now, it's in dispute whether the warrant was given to them. What Trump's team is saying is that it was flashed to them. That's illegal. Now, again, let's back up a second before we all do that. See, again, this is Swalwell, the same guy, because this was, I guess, August 9th. What he's talking about here is on his Twitter page yesterday at 4. So an hour, 24 hours later, he's not back. He should have deleted this tweet and didn't. Now he's singing a different tune. We're going to get to in a minute about Trump. But I want you to understand, they break their own rules. Now, folks, I've already said this before. I said it yesterday. This is just the beginning. This is where they're headed. We're no longer a constitutional republic, and it no longer matters what we think. It only matters what they think. And since the mainstream media and the Democrats, I know I repeat myself, since they seem to think it's just fine, and you got Swalwell here 24 hours later, 48 hours later saying it's just fine, nothing's going to happen. And again, just another norm breach, nobody cares. This is the type of thing that would have been a big frickin' deal 20 years ago. It's not a big deal because we're not a constitutional republic anymore. I mean, I want you to understand, folks, if this had happened, another thing interesting, by the way, Merrick Garland's claiming he didn't know anything about this. Now, I don't know if I believe him or not, but it could be true. Now, obviously, he signed off on it, quote unquote. But listen, the guy doesn't, there's a lot of things. Maybe they didn't alert him. Wouldn't surprise me if they didn't, right? But there's a lot of unusual things going on here. And the reaction, even if it is the reaction as bad as it is from the right side of the aisle, in FDR's days, in Kennedy's days, in Carter's days, okay? All Democrat administrations, folks, somebody's head would roll. Now, I'm not suggesting it'd be Ray. I'm not suggesting it'd be Merrick Garland. I mean, they might protect their attorney general, their FBI director, who are loyal stooges that do what they're told. But somebody's head's going to roll, the assistant to the assistant, the assistant. You got to go. Don't worry. We'll take care of you. We'll make sure you don't lose your pension. And, in a couple of years when things calm down, we'll put you over there to agriculture or something. And then another couple of years, we'll get you back into the Defense Department or Justice or wherever you want to be. But we got to get somebody's head here. Now, they don't even blink an eye. They don't even care. He doesn't even delete the tweet. But I didn't. Okay, good. All right, so let's get back to Swalwell. So the Republicans are a part of chaos, right? Let's hear what more he has to say about this. Again, unprecedented. And folks, by the way, I got to say this. If I hear one more time that it's unprecedented or that it hadn't happened, I almost did this, but again, because of the copyright, I don't do it. And I don't want to put another window in the screen either, right? But it's like the old Seinfeld joke when he calls up and it's something about the police and, he says that these people are harassing him or something. And he says, if it's the president of the States, you'd do something. They go, well, you're not the president. He goes, well, what's the difference? I'm a comedian in the United States. Why don't I get the same treatment? And that's the point of the rule of law, right? I don't care that they did this to a former president. I don't care if they do it to an existing president. I don't care if they do it to a plumber. I don't care if they do it to a teacher. I want it done by the rule of law and by the book. That's all that matters. That's what I'm complaining about. I don't care that he's going to run in 2024 or not. And by the way, we're going to get to his chances, folks. I was going to do it live, and I just said, no, let me peek. Folks, those of you who think that Trump is just going to waltz into the White House, you're going to want to stick around about 10 minutes. We're going to go over the Electoral College prediction, and we've got a little calculator. We'll go through it, and we'll do it ourselves together. Folks, it's a dogfight. Don't you anyway, let's get back to Swalwell.
The failure to even condemn it on their side. And I see it in my own social media channels where the threats have escalated since Donald Trump's residence was searched. And this is who they are now. They are a chaos party. Chaos is arming to the teeth most Americans with AR-15s. And all
right, well, he's going to go on and let him tell what a chaos party is. Again, accuse them of that, what you're doing. You literally went down to one of the leaders of our party or whatever, the way that we view the world, rule of law, etc. You showed up, guns drawn, right? Then we react to that and go, hey, we don't like that. Now we're the party of chaos. I just explained it yesterday, but for those of you who didn't hear, folks, the way this typically would be done under the rule of law is you've got a document dispute. They were down there in June. They looked around. They even called back and told Trump, hey, put some more security on there, which he did. A couple of days, whatever. There's varying stories. It's sort of a fog of war at this point. Some people are saying they have a mole. Some people are saying they got free video surveillance because, again, Trump is cooperating. He let them walk around. He met with them. They asked him to put more locks on. They did. They asked for the surveillance footage. It was sent to them. So some people are saying, no, they saw something when they look at the surveillance footage, so they wanted to come back. Any way you shake it, it's voluntary. All right, let's say you get to the point where it's not voluntary. I explained it to you yesterday. You go to a judge, which they did. They went to the judge and wanted a warrant so they could take 30 officers down there. Oh, by the way, and 3 lawyers from the Department of Justice. Oh, that's just typical, isn't it? No, it's not. Normally, you just send the officers, and then the lawyers don't have to go down there with you. Tells you a lot of what's going on there. Anyway, the way you do it is you go to that same judge. You go, Judge, I'd like a hearing. What's a hearing about? Well, we think he has things, and he says he doesn't. He's not turning them over. Let's all go have a hearing in front of you, and, you can review the footage in camera, right? And then you can decide. And we'll do it in front of everybody. You can bring the cameras in. Everybody can see it. There's lots of ways to do it. The way they did it is chaos. The way they did it is violence. The way they did it is over the top. And yet, here we are being told, oh my God, you're reacting to the chaos and the violence with violence? Oh, look at you chaos party and you violent party. Not to mention, what do we believe in? Well, I just want everybody shooting everybody because the Second Amendment's on the book and we won't let them just wipe it away. What else is chaos?
And letting our children live in fear. Chaos is January 6th. Chaos.
What children live in fear? The only children I know live in fear are his. Because he's tweeted several times, folks, his kids watching CNN, his kids watching this. Why do you let your children watch this, Swalwell? I'm not the one telling your kids every day that Republicans are out there hunting them. You are.
Government-mandated pregnancies. Chaos.
Government-mandated pregnancies. What? I mean, does it, folks, it's funny. We're going to get to Scott Adams if I can get that far today, but I will give him credit where he's right. He's oftentimes... Nowadays, he's very seldom right. But back before, in the Trump days, he's right all the time. And he's right about this one. They're just literally redefining words right before, government-mandated pregnancies. Now, when you say that to me, my brain, which is very rationally, logically oriented, as everybody knows, to me, that sounds like we put you in a gulag and we make people have sex so they have babies. That's literally what that is. What we're talking about here is, in some states, after a certain point or under certain circumstances, will no longer let you have an abortion. Now, you can still get the pill and all this other stuff, and you can still travel to other states, right? But that's not a government-forced pregnancy. Again, they're redefining words. And again, I say this a lot. Reality is what they say it is, not what it is. And unfortunately, when you're up against that, folks, then they get away with it. But we'll do a little bit more of him. I may have to cut him and come back. I didn't think it was going to take this long. We're already 12 minutes in. I got to move on to some other stuff. But go ahead, Swalwell.
Forcing Americans to spend $14,000 a year on insulin to just own the libs. And chaos is the leaders of the party arguing that we need to defund the FBI. They don't want community. They want chaos. And that's what the fallout's going to be from this search.
I have to ask you, as a former manager for Donald Trump's second impeachment, how vulnerable do you think he is here?
Incredibly vulnerable, because this was a Donald Trump appointed.
Now, folks, he is very vulnerable. And let me just get this out of the way. Folks, if you think that Trump might not get arrested, and I mean perp walked arrested, I put the odds right now at about 85 to 90%. And I'm not joking. Because I don't think it'll be the DOJ, as I said yesterday. It'll probably be one of these Fulton County or Letitia James or somebody out there that is in a position to not have anything to lose. Because if you're in Washington, and you're the DOJ and you're Garland, you're not really worried about it. You're probably going to retire after this term anyway. But there are people all the way down the line that are going to have to work in that town with Republicans going forward. But if you're Letitia James in New York, you're not worried. I mean, New York's blue upon blue upon blue. It's so blue you can barely see it. There's not going to be any fallout for Letitia. Not even fallout. She's a hero for doing this. We're going to get to that later too. But anyway, it'll be somebody like her. But I'm more of the opinion that Trump, in all likelihood, will be arrested. I don't think they're going to try to keep him off the ballot. Those people that are telling you this is all to institute the National Records Act, which has a disqualification clause, which is as dead as fried chicken. It's unconstitutional. It'll never go anywhere. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, they'll never go anywhere with that. They want Trump winning. I'm going to explain why they want Trump running. They don't want him winning. But I'm going to explain why Trump, in all likelihood, they want Trump to run later. But anyway, so Swalwell says he's really looking at it. And again, listen to a little bit more of it. But the only reason he's looking at it is because they've perverted the law. There's no law here. He has no flipping idea what he's talking about. He doesn't have a copy of the warrant. He doesn't know what the indictment says. He doesn't even know what the dispute is about. But, oh, yeah, sure. Go on NBC and talk about this. And before I'm going to do one more bit with him and move on. But let me say one thing about Swalwell, and I'm going to get to it later with Schumer and Garland. This is the new face of the Democrat Party. Not just that they're leftists. That's one thing. They believe in communism. That's fine. He talks about insulin. You know where that's going to lead. If they get to, and say they're going to vote on it again, if they get to $35 insulin, what's going to happen is companies are going to say, I'm no longer want to be in this business. So then, the Canadians are going to have to find some other place to get their insulin for free, and the English are going to have to find some place to get it for free. Guess who else is going to have to find some other place? And at some point, the only way to do that is for the government to take it over, right? And that's what will happen. The government will swoop in, and guess what? Before you know it, they'll have to subsidize it with our taxpayer dollars, and you'll end up paying, let's say you were paying $90 the free market, you'll end up paying $270 under the communist regime of government doing it, right? So, but again, that's just what they do. They ruin something by bringing the government involved, and the government has to take it over. But anyway, one more bit from Swalwell. But what I was going to say before I get back, he knows how to play the game. He's no longer interested in any rational, logical discussion, and that's the key difference. He's in a safe district, and instead of being in a safe district, think, all right, you're in a safe district, you can't really get unelected unless you do something extreme. I mean, I'm talking extreme, like murder somebody, right? Or literally get caught with even some Democrats that have been caught, with money that haven't been extreme enough. But you'd think you're in a district like that, right? Why don't you go do some good? Why don't you go out there and stick your neck out and try to get some real legislation or try to get some changes done? No. And again, I'm not saying he's got to do that. I'm saying that would be virtuous. What he's doing is doing what I would expect people to do and save seats. I just want to get up in front of the cameras for about 20 minutes on a Wednesday, run my mouth, tell a bunch of lies, and then go party all night. Listen, more sympathetic I couldn't be. I mean, I'm not knocking the guy. I'm just, don't tell me it's virtuous. It's not. It's what you would do if you could get away with it. And the Democrat Party have been challenged for a long time. They're not only socialists and communists, was bad enough, but they're building a legacy or a base that you can't reason with, you can't talk to. You can tell them, look at this inflation. Oh, it's Ukraine. It's the Republicans. But it's not. I can explain. No. And when they get to 50%, folks, that's it. You're over. You're done. And again, you look at the trend that's going on out there. We'll get to that in a moment. But as bad as things are, the polls are looking up for Democrats lately.
FBI director, an independent judge.
Oh, that's what I wanted to say. So it was appointed by a Republican. Now, folks, there's a lot in that. I mean, I could literally spend the rest of the show, I'm not gonna, but I could literally do the final 23 minutes of the show on that statement right there. Oh, there's nothing to see here. The guy who did it was a Republican. Well, Republicans don't do that. One of my little brothers the other day he does this all the time. He likes to say this both sides stuff. Anybody says both sides do it, they're a tourist. Just stop talking to them because there's nothing to talk about. Right? They think 2 + 2 is 4 one day, 6 another day, 7 another. Right? Republicans don't do that. They generally, more often than not, follow the law. But Democrats, that's what he's telling you. Hey, if it's a Democrat, why, you think Merrick Garland would sign off on something for Biden? No way. So if he did, Biden must have done it. That's how Democrats operate. Republicans don't do that. How many times have we seen, for crying out loud, the judge in Bannon's case is a Trump judge. And he ruled against Bannon on every single solitary thing down the line. How often you ever see that with Democrats? And anyway, but not to mention, in addition to the fact that Democrats think you're in power, you use your power to take care of your own. Republicans generally think, well, you're supposed to follow the rule of law. Now, we also know there's another phenomenon in the Republican Party, right? It's a big tent. When was the last, how many Democrats have gone against the system? The very attractive one from Hawaii, whose name I can't recall right now. You got any more? Every time you turn around, you got Rand Paul, you got Susan Collins, you got Lisa Murkowski, you got Milquetoast Mitt Romney, right? I mean, it's every time 20 Republicans voted for Merrick Garland. You know how many Democrats voted for Bill Barr to be confirmed? Bill frickin' Barr, who served under Herbert Walker Bush, right? He got 2 Democrat votes. 2. Merrick Garland got 20. Oh, both sides do it, right? Anyway, I don't know what the world is with all this stuff going on. Anyway, so he talked about Christopher Wray signing on, and then he said, I don't know if you caught it, but he also said a neutral judge. I mean, anyway, folks, I got to move on. I literally could do the entire thing with that bit, but I'm not going to. All right, so here's a couple other fallouts from the Trump situation. Christopher Wray condemns threats against FBI after Mar-a-Lago raid. FBI Director Christopher Wray decried what he called deplorable and dangerous threats against law enforcement in his first comment since Monday's unprecedented raid on President Donald Trump's Florida residence. I almost could stop right there, folks. I'm not going to insult your intelligence by commenting on that. I'm always concerned about threats to law enforcement, Raid told reporters Wednesday following a visit to the FBI's field office in Omaha, Nebraska. Violence against law enforcement is not the answer, no matter who you're upset with. Anyway, blah, 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 blah. Folks, you think you're in a constitutional republic? And that he's got the balls to literally the first thing he says, hey, whoa, don't threaten us. Yeah, okay. Now, before I move on to something else, I want you to understand, that's what they're doing, right? These are communist people. They don't look at it and go, I've got all of China. Taiwan's this tiny little island. Literally it is the most densely populated country on earth by far, right? You got a ton of people in a very, very small island. Just let them have it. They got a little chip thing. Who cares? They don't look at anything like that, right? And so they're going to keep coming and keep coming and keep coming. And the benefit for them is they control the system. If there's any violence against law enforcement or anyone, if anything happens, it'll just be used against you. It'll make things worse. So Christopher Wray and all these guys, this is all part of the design. If you had a constitutional republic, he'd right now be saying no comment, or he'd be saying, here's who messed it up. He's being disciplined or she's being disciplined and or fired, or here's our process for determining whether they will be disciplined or fired. The fact that he brushes it off like a gay French king and next thing you know is talking about, by God, don't you dare threaten me, shows you where we are. And again, part of the phenomenon, I say this all the time, the environment that we have creates Christopher Wrays. Yeah, he was appointed by Trump. That doesn't mean he's a Republican just because he got Republican by his name. In addition, he knows, like my mother used to say, he knows where his bread is better buttered. He knows. What happens if you stand up and do something principled? First off, he'd be fired. He'd be fired so fast your head would spin. Number two, right, it would just create a hassle for him. And he's been in the federal government before he went to private practice and made a fortune and comes back to the government. He didn't want to lose his pension. Anyway, it just tells you a lot of where we are. All right. Do I want to do this or do I not want to do it? That's not what I ordered. I thought I had something else about the Trump phenomenon. Let's do this. Before I do this, because I was going to go to that comment from Chuck U. Schumer and talk about Garland and Schumer. But let me do this real quick, because I promised it about 10 minutes ago. I know there's a lot of speculation out there. A lot of people, I don't listen to nearly as many podcasts as I used to. I just don't have the time. But I heard Glenn Beck say it this morning, or maybe it was yesterday, I can't recall. And I heard other people say, Trump's going to just waltz in 2024. Oh, yeah. This is just, it's different. It's different. You're going to unify the right. Woo, they're going to become hell to pay come November and 2024 and all this other stuff. So, folks, I'm a data guy. I like to look at stuff. So I went and I did some looking before I went on the air today. And here's our friends at 538. As you know, we like to use the leftist. I don't want to go to a conservative place that might bend it a little bit towards our side. Let's use their models. Again, this might be a little bit hyped up towards their side, but that's okay. That's okay. Let's take a look at it, because I got to be honest with you. If you've been following elections, and I have for well over 45 years, very closely, this should be an awful year for the House. We're talking 30 to 60, 70 seats lost for a variety of reasons. Bad economy, right? Party in power always loses. Not always. There's a few exceptions. Surprisingly enough, W. Bush was an exception to that. He did not lose during his first off-year election. But most of the time you do, right? And so you should expect in general times to lose, 10 to 30. And because the economy is so bad, you would expect to lose a lot more than that. Well, the Senate is up. Now, the Republicans have a lot more seats to defend this time. So it's a little bit of a tough year. But, again, all the factors say it should be a good year. And with the economy being where it is, and the Democrats literally just passed a $750 billion. They call it the Inflation Reduction Act. It's really just the Green New Deal pared down, right, which is going to add to inflation. It adds 87,000 IRS agents to come after the middle class, right? Now, all of these things should lead to a shellacking. Well, let's take a look here at 538. Current Senate forecast, 60% chance Democrats take the Senate. Now, that's down. I've been following this. This is about the time of year you're within 90 days of the election. You start to follow this stuff a little bit closer. I've been doing it for about 100, 105 days. And about 15 days, 2 weeks ago, a little bit more, it was about 54-46 in favor of the Republicans. So I don't know what's done it, but in all likelihood, it's been the what's the weak candidates nonsense, which a lot of people will believe. if and when it goes on and it happens, a lot of people believe, well, you just nominated some bad candidates in Pennsylvania. You nominated some bad candidates in Georgia. Don't believe it, folks. That's all the narrative that they're trying to sell you, and however they end up rigging this thing, okay? You should be looking at the Republicans easily keeping the Senate and picking up a seat or two and retaking it technically. All right. Now, luckily, folks, the House still looks like an 80% GOP takeover, so we shall see. Folks, just so you know, the reason you're seeing this is the Democrats are nationalizing elections, right? I mean, the New York City mayor, Eric Adams, announced yesterday that he's thinking about coming down to campaign for Beto O'Rourke in Texas. What does that tell you, right? It's laughable. What in the world would the New York City mayor be welcome in Texas, of all places? It tells you the Democrats are nationalizing elections. That's why their prospects are so much better in the Senate, because they've nationalized that race a lot easier than these little localized races where people are still focused on things that matter, like reality and like inflation and the price you pay and the fact that oil is going to go up as far as the eye can see. But anyway, let's look at a couple other things. Let's look at the congressional ballot. And we've talked about this before. Been a while since I've talked about it on the show, but last time we looked at it, it was Republicans about 2 points. It's now down essentially to a dead heat. Republicans 44.6, Democrats 44.5. Now, again, that's a little skewed because you got one poll in here. The Economist has a poll 44-38. Give me a break. I mean, come on. But anyway, folks, it's not clear cut. So let's get to Trump. All right, it's called 270 to win. For those of you who are listening, those of you that are on the YouTubes or the Rumbles, you can see it. Now, there's a lot of different ones out there. The reason I like this particular model, again, 270towin.com, is that it's just easy peasy and to interact with it. So what they do, this model does, I like, is basically brings you up a map of the United States of America. If you're watching it, you see it. If you're listening, I've got a map of all the states, and basically the deadlock states where there's no chance of the other side winning, they're already cuddled in for me. So there's 125 electoral votes that a Republican ain't moving. There are 209. You heard me. 209. You heard me. 209 deep blue. That means you start there. Imagine they're running, okay? You got the Republican at the starting block, and you got the Democrat about 50 yards down there starting in a 100-yard race. That's what you got, okay? They need 61, folks. And I just so you understand, California, blue, 54 votes. New York, blue, 28 votes. Illinois, blue, 19 votes. Virginia, 13. Anyway, you get the idea, okay? Just to make sure you understand how this map works, right? Alabama, red. Tennessee, red. That's 20. You get the idea. All right, folks, this is not good. All right, so I'm going to go in here and fill in this map because the ones that are gray, they say, or toss-ups, I don't think they are. Florida, I'm going to go ahead and make that red. Ohio, I'm going to go ahead and make that red. Iowa, I'm going to go ahead and make that red. It's pretty easy. Folks, that brings you up to 209 to 178. Again, the Democrats need 61. The Republicans, right, need, 22 plus 70 need 92, right? You've made up a fair amount of ground here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to be generous. I'm going to say North Carolina and Tejas. I'm going to give you Tejas. I don't think so. I think in 2 years, it'll depend. I think Florida is going to get redder. Tejas, I think, is going to stay about the same. For reasons I could explain, doesn't matter. That brings us up now to 234 to 209. Now I need another Republican state. Let me just give you one more, folks, because I believe in being fair. I'm going to flip Georgia. I'm going to say Georgia's red. All right? That's 250. I'm going to go off. This is as far as I can go, folks. Arizona's now red. 261. We need 9 more. Now, you tell me where you're going to get them. Nevada, not a chance. It's not enough anyway. It's 6. Minnesota, no. Wisconsin, maybe. Michigan, probably not. Pennsylvania, probably not. Maine, probably not. New Hampshire, probably not. We're done. There are no more, right? So you're telling me Trump runs and all this wave of upset over the fact that they've indicted him, they're harassing him, he's being investigated by all these people, that all these people, and inside of all the racism he creates and everything else, where is he going to pick up the other electoral votes? Folks, the Democrats love Trump running. They can't, listen, they are harassing him to piss you off, right? And to hopefully you'll do something violent, which they'll use against you like January 6th, to raise money and to work up their base because he's evil. That's all this is. And believe me, the last thing they want is Trump not running. The last thing. Anyway, folks, just be sober about what we're dealing with here. We don't need to lie to ourselves, okay? Trump is no panacea to this thing. I'm not saying he can't win. Don't misunderstand. And if you want to send me hate mail, please do. Publius@GAMcast.net. Publius @GAMcast.net. Publius@GAMcast.net. Anything you want. You want to criticize me, you want me to cover something, you can get in touch with me there. You can also follow me on Twitter @mail_American. Remember, it's MAIL, not MALE. So, all right, I now have 10 minutes to get to a lot more stories. So let's get back into the swing about Trump. What's going on with this Trump phenomenon? Folks, I want you to listen to Letitia James. This is when she was running for Attorney General of the state of New York. This is when she was running. This has come up recently. I think Eric Trump tweeted it. Anyway, this is a video she did about getting people to vote, get out to vote. I believe she ran in 2020. I think it was 2020 for sure, but it might have been 2018. It doesn't matter. Listen to why she wants you to vote for her for Attorney General.
I voted to see the people who stay.
I don't know why it is unbelievable. I can fix it quick. I don't know why it does that. But for some reason, the computer wants to go back to the max speakers, and I have better speakers so you hear better. Anyway, fixed it. Go.
I voted to see the people who say, oh, I'm not going to bother to register to vote because my voice doesn't make a difference. I'm just one person.
I say one name. Donald Trump. That should motivate you. Get off your ass and vote.
Will you sue him for us?
Oh, we're going to definitely sue him. We're going to be a real pain in the ass. He's going to know my name personally.
I love it.
Now, you heard her. The reason you should vote for her, get off your ass and vote. I'm going to be a pain in his ass. Will you sue him? Yes, all this stuff, right? And I tell you that partially because yesterday Trump sat for a deposition in a civil matter where he gave, I think, 250, took the fifth. Well, I'll explain why he took the fifth in a minute. You already probably know if you've been listening for a long time. A lot of you have. But, folks, this is important. You're in New York, okay? Trump doesn't even live there anymore. He moved. He moved to Florida. And this is something, I mean, imagine if you're going to run for mayor of Atlanta. Just imagine. Okay. Would you think if you were going to run for mayor, like, you know what I'm going to do? First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to get rid of the Falcons. I'm going to get rid of it. You know what? Next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to run Coca-Cola straight out of town. First chance I get. No, you wouldn't do that because people aren't likely to vote for you for mayor of Atlanta because that's not what they want done. So people that run for office typically don't say they're going to do things that people don't care about or don't like. So what this tells you is this is popular in New York. You're in New York. You have an attorney general. I would think if I were a New Yorker, well, I'd want my attorney general to go after criminals. I'd want my attorney general to make sure crime goes down. I'd want my attorney general to make sure the law is done fairly so people don't roll up into chaos, right? No, apparently not. Apparently in New York, I want you to go after one man who doesn't even live here anymore. Think about that, folks. And again, that's all the Democrats have 24/7, 365 now. Every one of their platforms is either the earth is about to end or the other side is evil. And again, it's all part of this thing. How do you reason with that person? How do you go with that person like, yeah, but since Letitia James has taken over, crime has gone up because her policies are bad. Yeah, but Trump. Anyway, folks, to cover the fifth thing real quick, I've told you this before, but in some states, they won't let you do that. So in a lot of states, they'll allow somebody to take a blanket fifth. So you come in there, you ask them a question, I take the fifth, and then you're allowed to say, is it fair to say that if every question I ask you today, you're going to take the fifth? Yes, and that's the end of it, right? Some states, minority apparently, and New York is one of them, they'll just allow you to ask as many questions as you want. And the trick to that is, if you're willing to sit there for 6 hours, right, and waste everybody's time, you get to say, well, he took the fifth 250 times, which is magically worse than somebody that took it 249 and 248. Well, anybody with a brain knows that just means that the lawyer just asked more questions. Doesn't mean anything, right? Not to mention you're not supposed to be able to take the fifth and use it against you, right? In a criminal proceeding, you can't, right? Of course, it's a civil proceeding. Now, what does it tell you that he's taken the fifth? Well, let me tell you something. If he was my lawyer and you had the attorney general with the power to indict you having a civil lawsuit, I'm pretty sure she's only going to ask you questions that she can then use to go after you, which is to say this. If I thought this was going to be a a show trial and a political prosecution, I would urge you to take the Fifth, no matter what the questions are. So let's get to Biden real quick. I've had this in the can for a couple of days. Those of you, I'll try to show you what's going on because you can't see it. It's not as effective, but it's important to see this. This is a couple days ago when they were celebrating the CHIPS Act. So Nancy, Biden, some dude, I don't know who the other two are, doesn't matter, all went to the podium. Schumer's at the podium. He's getting ready to speak. As is per usual, he turns around, and to his left is a gentleman. There's Biden, there's Pelosi, and then there's a woman. I don't know who she is. And he literally goes to shake the hands of these people, which is typical. Then he's going to turn around and give his speech, right? And I'm going to give you a little commentary to understand for those of you who can't see it. But anyway, here it is. So there's Schumer, shakes Biden's hand, shakes the guy to Biden's left, shakes Pelosi, and shakes the woman on the right. Now, as soon as he left Biden and went to the gentleman on the left, Biden stood there the whole time with his hand out, giving him this bewildered look. Like, hey, Chuck, hey, how about a rump for the governor, right? For Blazing Saddle fans. Look, folks, and the reason I bring this up, I've never seen it that bad. That's as bad as I've ever seen. He literally shook his hand first, which is customary, went to the guy next to him, went back, and Biden's like, hey, you're here. Here's my hand. Dude, I shook your hand first, right? And Schumer, if you see this video, Schumer does a good job covering it and just ignoring it. But, folks, it's getting worse, which is what you would expect, folks. I mean, you would expect it to get worse because he was bad when he got there, and this is not an easy job. I mean, go back if you want to prove this to yourself. Go back and take a look of pictures at George W. Bush or Barack Obama, two examples of relatively young men winning the job and relatively decent-looking guys when they went in. And you get to midway through their term, the first term, and they've aged tremendously. You get to their second terms, you're like, oh my God. So anyway, folks, here's another thing from the Joe Biden out there, doing everything he can to divide people. He had this to say recently about July's inflation numbers.
Danielle, thank you. Before I begin today, I want to say a word about the news that came out today relative to the economy. Actually, I just want to say a number, 0. Today, we received news that our economy had 0% inflation in the month of July.
Now, folks, that's a lie. And it's not even really a good lie. Let me explain what's going on. Basically, inflation in June was 8.5%. Inflation in July was 8.5% on an annualized basis. That's why they do it. And so what they're telling you is inflation didn't go up, it didn't go down. All right? So the best example I can give you to understand that, I used to do a lot of hurricane work in Florida. And I've taken a few cases to trial, and I've had a few clients, believe it or not, who stayed in the house during the hurricane. And they all tell the same story. Well, water hit, and it feels like you get hit by a meteor. And then the water starts coming in, and it starts rising. And I had a few people that rose all the way past the first floor. So you start going up the steps, and water keeps rising. And at one point, you're thinking, I ain't got no more floors. This is the highest floor I got. I mean, I guess I got a roof. But, and again, it goes, at some point, it just stops. It just stops. And it sits there for about an hour, and then it just starts receding. And it recedes fast. It's like somebody flushed a toilet. I mean, I've had 10 people testify essentially to that on the stand, like clockwork. And it makes sense when you think about it. The water hits, right? The water moves on past. The water comes up, right? At some point, you're in the middle of the flood, right? That's when the water sits still. And then eventually the water moves on and the tail of it comes. And when the tail of it comes, it just sucks all the rest of it out of there. That's what's going to happen with inflation. We got hit hard. We're at that stage where it's not rising, it's not lowering, right? But we're still seeing the flood there, right? Eventually, now since they spent all this money recently, they've given another $1 billion to Ukraine, and there's pumped another $750 billion into the economy on this Inflation Act. But sooner or later, we're going to get to the tail, and it'll go down quickly. But we're still in the middle of it. You're still sitting up there on the first floor looking at the water going, please, God, don't start rising again. Please, God, don't start rising again. Are you happy now? Now, again, folks, they do this all the time. They're somehow they think we should be happy about that. Last thing here, folks, we want to get his hat in the can for a while. Liz Cheney says she would find it very difficult to support Ron DeSantis in general election. Folks, I could sit here and talk about the fact that this proves that Liz Cheney's a fraud. It's not the point of this. I may talk about it in greater detail tomorrow. The point of this is simply this. It's not Trump. It's not DeSantis. It's us. It's always been us. They hated Reagan just as bad as they hate Trump. Don't ever let them fool you, folks. Right? Don't let them fool you. Anyway, you're now all caught up to date on all the news of the day. And if you like this live stream, I hope you tune back in tomorrow.